If your kitchen looks like this when you're done, that the doors and the fronts are misaligned, you need to fix it. There cannot be any second opinions about that. When your friends and family comes over to see that brand new Ikea kitchen and the doors are not sitting super sharp, they will make you bend your head down in shame. So we want to avoid that. This is what you want. You want them to be sitting exactly parallel to each other, looking super sharp, and everybody will say, wow, you did a great job, because you did. Installing an IKEA kitchen is not that easy. And the same can be said about adjusting doors and drawers. It's not that easy, but if you have a plan and you know how to do it, anyone can get a really great result. So keep watching and I will share my plan with you. Let's get started. You might very rightfully be wondering why we are not using the instruction that comes with the hinges and the drawer hardware. And the reason for that is that those instructions do tell you which screws to turn in order to move the door or the drawer front in a certain direction. But the instruction do not tell you in which order you should do the various adjustments. And that is really important. Otherwise, you'll be adjusting from now on until forever. Because when you do one certain adjustment on a door and then you do another one, then the first one might be impacted because you don't do it in the right order. So that's what we want to do. We want to have a certain order of doing things, which is why we need a plan. Before we begin to adjust the doors and the drawers, we need to make sure that all the base cabinets are level and all the wall cabinets has been checked as well. And you know how to do that, and if not, then check the video I'm linking to up in the corner there. And if your door hinges are the old type that do not have the damper built in, you need to take off that soft close damper thing first. And then you need to grab a Phillips number 2 screwdriver. Let's start with the hinges. We have two kind of hinges for the doors on IKEA cabinets, and they are in principle working the same way. The only difference between the two, apart from the appearance, is that this one opens up the door 110 degrees, whereas the other one, the big one you see here, is opening up the door 153 degrees. And we need that more opening angle when we have interior drawers that need space to come out, because otherwise with a 110 degree hinge, the door will be in the way. These two hinges, they share the same base, and that's the one you see here sitting inside a cabinet. And it's on this base that we can adjust the height of the hinge, right there on that screw in the middle. So with the hinge sitting on top of the base, we can have access to that very screw through that hole right in the hinge. The other two screws we see on the hinge, they are for adjusting the hinge, and the one here to the left is the one we use when we want to tilt the door either left or right from the front, and the other one is when we want to push the door in or out from the cabinet, meaning away from the cabinet. And they are the exact same screws we have on the bigger 153 degrees hinge. We first have that one in the middle for adjusting the hinge up and down. Then we have the one here to the left that will move the hinge in the same direction as I mentioned before. That is left or right when you see it from the front. And then finally we have the screw at the back for pushing the door away from the frame or putting it closer to the frame. So when I turn this screw clockwise, the door will move to the left, seen from the front, and when I turn it counterclockwise, the door will move to the right. And likewise, when I spin the screw at the back one way, the door will be pushed away from the frame, and when I turn it the other way, the door will be moved closer to the frame. And finally, when I turn the screw that sits on the base plate of the hinge, I will move the door up and down. The drawer fronts can also be adjusted in 3 directions, and the first one is by turning that rod you see on the top there, and that will either push the front away from the box or pull it towards the box at the top of the front. So we want to adjust this one if the front is not sitting flat on the cabinet. The next one is where we can move the drawer front up and down, and we're doing that by turning on that screw you see here at the back. The last direction we can adjust is moving the front sideways, and we do that on that screw you see there at the front. It's a bit difficult to show the direction of this adjustment in this picture, but imagine you're standing in front of the drawer, then it will move either left or right. before you can adjust anything on the drawer fronts, you need to push back that cover sitting there on the top of that rod, and you need to flip off that little plastic cover in front of the adjustment screws. Later in this video, I will use a term called flatness, and that's when we need to adjust for how well the door and the drawer front is sitting flat on the cabinet box. And that's always the first things I do when I put in a drawer, is to adjust the flatness, because that's easily done. You just twist those rods sitting there at the top when you have either a gap at the top or at the bottom, and you either bring it out or you bring it in, and then it will sit all flat and nicely. Very easy. And if we just stop there for a second, I just want to say that I keep all the adjustments for the end of the installation of all doors and drawers, except this one, the flatness of the drawer front, because that one do not have an impact on any other adjustment. That are only for this front. So I do that when I push that drawer in after it's assembled. Adjusting the fronts up and down is equally easy. You just turn on that screw sitting at the back. And as you'll see, when you spin one way, it'll go up, and you spin the other way, it'll go down. You will notice, though, that when you get to the outer position, it will start going the opposite way. So you can just continue spinning, and it will eventually end up where you want it to be. Finally, we get to the last one, where we're adjusting the drawer fronts to the left or the right. And you will notice there's not a lot of movement happening when you're turning those two screws. And all you have to do, you have to turn both of them. So if you want to move the front left, you spin counterclockwise on the right-hand side and clockwise on the left-hand side, and then you'll see it will move, but don't expect a lot. It's only moving a little bit. Finally, we are getting to where I'm telling you in which order I do things when I adjust the kitchen. And before I do, I want to tell you that the more time you have spent on leveling your cabinets, only a minimum of adjustment will be necessary. So if you have made a really good job on leveling, there will not be a lot of adjustment to be done. But you'll see that for yourself. But I can highly recommend to double check with your level if everything is lined up perfectly before you start the adjustment. And then a second note here is, if you're reusing hinges from a previous Ikea kitchen, you need to know that those are not at that zero set baseline. So there will be a lot of adjustment to be done on those. And it will take a long time, but it's definitely possible. Just so you know. Finally, we're getting to the secret sauce of all this, the sequence of adjustment. And I've been adjusting so many doors and drawers that I have worked up my own routine into which order I do things to get the best result, but also to get the job done with, because you can adjust forever. You can keep looking at it, and you can take a step back, and you can scrutinize, and you can adjust forever. I find this order of adjustment is what works for me. I always start with the doors before I move on to the drawers in most cases. But in some cases, it's a mix, because if you have a drawer sitting in a cabinet where you also have drawers, right, then you need to do both. But I start with the doors and I start with the uppers. The list you see here is the order I do the adjustment. And now I will break it down for you in each single step. I will use this small setup of 2 doors and 3 drawers as an example for how I go about adjusting a setup like this. And the first thing I would do, I would adjust the doors to be parallel. And I will make sure that the door to the left, not the one with the big handle, because that is sitting on the other side of the panel, so that is being adjusted by itself. But the door to the left in front of that sink cabinet is being parallel to the panel, because I cannot adjust the panel, so I have to adjust the door. And with the left door parallel to the panel, I would adjust the right door, so it sits parallel to the left door. And when that is done, I can focus on the gap between those 2 doors and between the left door and the panel. Then I will make sure that I have the same gap. And when that is done, I will adjust the height of the doors so they sit at the same height. And finally, I will adjust the flatness of the door. I will make sure that none of the corners in the middle of those 2 double doors has a clearance towards the cabinet box. And in order to have that corner moved inwards towards the cabinet, you need to push out the opposite corner. So that means the upper hinge on that right-hand door there needs to come out by adjusting the hinge. You don't adjust the lower one in because that will not do anything. You need to push that upper corner out to get the lower corner move close to the cabinet. It's a bit complicated to explain, so I suggested you just go ahead and try it. You cannot ruin anything. With the doors adjusted, we can move on to the drawers. And the first thing I do is I make sure that the drawer front is sitting flat on the cabinet. As mentioned earlier, I normally do that when I put in the drawer, but I just double check now that it's sitting nicely flat and all four corners of the drawer front is touching the cabinet box. You can only do that for the 10 and the 15 inch drawers. You cannot do that for the 5-inch high drawer front. When that is done, you move on to adjusting all the drawer fronts so they are sitting parallel to each other horizontally. You don't focus on the vertical gap just yet. You go ahead and you focus on them being parallel to each other in the height. So that gap between each drawer front has to be the same at each side, and some of them you have to move up, others you want to move down a bit. But you just keep adjusting all those 3 drawers. That is 6 points you need to adjust until they are parallel to each other. And when that is done, you move on that they are sitting parallel to each other on a vertical line. And that means the gap between the drawer front and the panel on the right hand side, and the gap between the drawer front and the door in the sink cabinet. And you do that by moving the drawer front sideways. And when that is done, that's it. You have managed to adjust all 3 drawer fronts and 2 doors in this case, and you move on to the next section of your kitchen. I hope you made it this far into this video, and I hope I didn't discourage you to start adjusting your doors and drawers. It's not that complicated. It's just a bit of taking your time and being patient about it. And you just need to step back, take a look at it, what you did, and move forward and adjust until it's sitting nicely. One final tip is that if you have a wall like the one you see in this video, is that you start in the middle. You start with the doors in the middle, because every door has only a certain amount of adjustment possibility, in terms of the limits, how much it can move up and down and to the side. So you want to start in the middle, and then you want to work your way towards the right and to the left. If you start all the way to the left, you might not have enough possibilities for adjustment when you get to the right side. So start in the middle and work your way outwards. I wish you all the best, and I do hope that if you like this video, that you will subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you so much, and good luck with your project.